Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of the TriStar Gym channel. For this episode, we're going to be doing the fight analysis breakdown, pre-fight analysis breakdown for Anthony Pettis versus Eddie Alvarez. So in this episode, I'm going to be answering your most popular questions and your most popular comments. Okay, so the first comment we have here is from Dread Fun. Dread Fun asks, will Pettis be able to do some of his more spectacular kicking, or will he be gun shy? Well, we all know that Pettis in his last fight had a hard loss against RDA. He lost all 5 rounds on the judges' card, and he got hit with some big shots. And I personally never felt he got the ball rolling, and I was very surprised that he was pushed back to the fence so much like he was. I was really surprised because Pettis is so good at jumping off the cage, pushing off the cage. I was really expecting for him to punch off the cage or do something to get his back off that cage, and he was always so good at controlling distance. I think in that fight, RDA's style and the fact that he was a southpaw and the durability of RDA, I think really surprised Pettis. But I really think in this fight he's not gonna make the same mistake twice. I really believe he's gonna get in the center of that octagon. And when you're in the center of the octagon, you have the space to kick. When you're up against the fence and you throw a kick is a long range weapon. But when you're up against the fence, you're in close range. So that's why I think RDA was able to keep those kicks at bay, because he was so close to Pettis. He had him wedged up against the fence for so long in the fight that it made it so hard for Pettis to kick. And I think in this fight, this won't happen again. I'm sure he's been working on it really hard, and he wants to make sure that he doesn't get stuck up against the fence again. So I do expect a lot of kicking from Pettis in this fight, and I think the kicks are going to be the keys to victory for Pettis. Next question. Let's see here. Next question. Francis Ruzel. Hi Firas. What can we expect from Pettis coming from the tough loss against RDA? Will he be mentally? And what changements will he have made for the holes, if any? Okay, so sometimes you have a loss, and fighters are just not mentally the same. That is very true, Francis. That is very true. But the thing is, Pettis didn't get he didn't get hurt in that fight. I think he got hit a couple of times. I think he got dominated, but he didn't get punished. It's not like he left with a broken bone, or if he left with a concussion. I don't think he left beat up really badly. He got outscored. He got roughed up a bit. Nothing he hasn't seen before, nothing he hasn't felt before. I think the loss hurt him more than anything else. He had a lot of momentum behind him. He was the first fighter I think the only MMA fighter on Wheaties box. His name was blowing up. He's super famous, and he has such a beautiful style, and he won in such a incredible fashion when he fought Melendez and when he fought Benson Henderson. He had so much momentum behind him. I think it was more of a mental, more of an ego, bruise to the ego. I don't think his mental is going to be injured. I don't think he's going to go in there with any hesitation. I don't think he has any negative associations with fighting. I think he just wants to make sure he doesn't lose. And I think, like, if you have a fight like Anderson Silva where you break a bone or you get really beat up really badly, some guys they get beat so bad that they don't remember anything that happened in the fight. Those kind of guys, I think, have more risk. They have more risk to have anxiety before their fight, etc. I don't think it's going to be the same thing with Pettis. He's very experienced. He's been around the block. I expect him to be very aggressive in this fight, ready to show that he's ready to be champion again. And I think we're going to probably very likely see the best Pettis ever. Why? Because when you lose your title, when the first time you win your title, everybody around you is telling you the best, and it's such a great feeling. But when you lose your title, it's one of the worst feelings in the world. So you're gonna want to go back in the gym and get to work. You're gonna push out all the PR, and you're gonna really get back down to work. And I think that's what he's done. I haven't seen him too much online. I haven't seen him too much on social media. Not that I go on myself very often, but I think he's probably digging deep, and he wants that title again. He got a taste of what it's like to be champion, and I think his mentality is going to be stronger than ever. So I think it's going to be opposite. He's going to be more mentally strong, more mentally driven than ever before. Next question. Joe B361. Who has the more effective boxing? Well, when it comes to boxing, I got to side with Alvarez. He does a lot of boxing mechanics. He leans, he shifts, he punches at an angle, he throws a nice right hand, and he exits at a 45-degree angle. He does a lot of things that could get you in trouble in Muay Thai or kickboxing. when you bob and weave and open your stance that way, you're more susceptible to kicks. And I think if you remember his fight with Cowboy, a lot of those tactics did get him in trouble. A lot of it got him a lot of landed a lot of great shots, especially in round one and even in round three. He landed some big shots in round three against Cowboy, but ultimately the Muay Thai clashed with his style. Every time he was trying to lean, he would eat a head kick. He ate one really bad head kick in round three, and that was because of his boxing tactics. So I would give the boxing, if this was a straight boxing match, I would definitely give the edge to Alvarez. But when you add in the kicking, the overall striking dynamics change, and I have to lean towards Pettis. I think Pettis is going to have an advantage because of those kicks. The flying kicks, the flying knees that Pettis does are very dangerous, especially for a shorter boxer. And Alvarez is a very accurate puncher, and he's very quick and loose, and he depends a lot on lateral movement. And he also drops his hands quite a bit, and he does that because this is technically sound in boxing. But when you're fighting a guy who has very quick kicks like Pettis, who does a lot of spinning stuff and who does a lot of jumping kicks and jumping knees, you have to be very, very careful about dropping your hands and bobbing and weaving and trying to zigzag. These things are seldom seen in Muay Thai and in kickboxing because of that reason. When you're bobbing and weaving, you're open for head kicks and of course low kicks. And Pettis has one of the best flying knees. If you guys remember, he hit Dos Anjos with a beautiful flying knee in round number one, a beautiful flying knee. I think it was round number one or round number two. And those can be very dangerous. And Dos Anjos has a very strict Muay Thai posture. He doesn't bob and weave and duck his head. If Eddie ducks into one of those knees, it could be a long night. It could be a quick night. It could be a short night actually for Alvarez. So when it comes to boxing, I definitely give the edge to Eddie Alvarez. But when it comes to overall Muay Thai, overall striking for MMA, I have to give the edge to Pettis. Next question, David Krolak. Which of either fighter's attributes do you think are being underestimated? That's a good question. I don't know if either fighter is being underestimated. I think they're both in incredible physical shape, so it's not something we really talk about because these two fighters never got tired in any of their fights, and they've both done 5 rounders. So I would say it's kind of hard to say. I would say one thing that's very underestimated about Eddie Alvarez is his heart. He's been in wars. He's been in hard wars, and that fight with Cerrone, a lot of guys would have given up. His leg was badly injured in round number two, and he came back in round number three and landed some big shots, fought hard. He ended up getting tripped up again with a leg kick, and had to sit down, and Cowboy got on top of him. But he showed a lot of heart in that fight. He took a shin kick to the jaw in round number three. So Eddie's not averse to taking punishment. He's been taking a lot of punishment in his big fights, and I don't see this fight to be any different. I think there will be punishment dished on both sides, and I think the heart of these fighters, how much punishment they can take is really amazing. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They don't see how much they withstand. If you take the time to think about what a shin kick to the head does to you from Cowboy Cerrone, I mean, he took it and he kept fighting. I mean, this is really impressive. Both very tough and have extreme heart, both these fighters. Next question. KO mode. Will Pettis become a champion again, considering that there are many new strong contenders and potential contenders? P.S. Respect from Russian fans. Thank you for your work. Well, you're very welcome, my friend, Mr. KO mode. Will Pettis be champion again? Well, it remains to be seen, but I believe he's got what it takes. I think the Dos Anjos fight was a surprise to all of us. I think we were all surprised. Many people were counting Dos Anjos out on that fight. And, Dos Anjos had lost in the past, and he found himself, and he just goes to show that sometimes losses can be the best things that ever happened to you. You change the way you train, you rededicate yourself, you reaffirm yourself, it lights a new fire in you, and you could be a lot better, significantly better after a loss. And Dos Anjos is proof of that. Robbie Lawler's proof of that. So many fighters. I can list so many great fighters that had a string of losses and came back to be world champion or a top contender. And I think Pettis, I think he's found that fire. I haven't worked with him, I haven't talked to him, but I just see he strikes me as the type of individual that doesn't expect to lose. And I think his loss against RDA probably really made him reassess what he does. and I look forward to seeing him fight. I think he's a very entertaining fighter. He's very good for the sport, and I'm definitely very confident he'll be in a world title fight again. I have no doubts. So look for that. Next question. The buy the BIY. Do you think Alvarez's wrestling, conditioning, and pressure is good enough to do what RDA did to Pettis? Well, I think his conditioning is great, and I think his pressure is good. But he's a different style than Pettis. Excuse me, than RDA. RDA, he does a lot of kicking. He does a lot of Muay Thai, and he has a different stance. Whereas Alvarez uses a lot of lateral movement. So when you're using a lot of lateral movement, you're not gonna put as much forward pressure as a Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos, his Muay Thai style is designed for that. He's built like a tank and he moves in like a tank and he crowds you. Whereas Alvarez uses a lot of lateral footwork in and out. His style is to tag you and step out. And with Cerrone, he did step into the pocket and he did throw a lot of punches, especially in round one. They tied up and he was doing some dirty boxing. I don't think that'll really work as well with Pettis because Pettis is shorter than Donald. When you fight a taller guy, you want to get on the inside and you have a lot more leverage. You could be weaker, physically weaker than a taller guy, but on the inside trading punches, you're gonna have more leverage. So I think it was a special scenario. I think if you look at Eddie Alvarez's fights with opponents that are the same height as Pettis, 5'9", he's always in and out lateral. So I don't think he'll be able to push Pettis up to the fence for a prolonged period of time like Melendez did, like RDA did. I think he can do it with his wrestling, yes, but not necessarily with the way he strikes. Melendez also is very compact and moves forward and has more of a Muay Thai style. He works with Fairtex, of course. It's a question of style. So because of Eddie Alvarez's style, I don't think it's a pressure style. I don't think they'll be up against the fence as much in terms of the striking. The wrestling, maybe. I do believe that there's going to be some wrestling. I think Eddie is wise enough to know he's going to mix his boxing with his wrestling. He's not just going to try and go with the striking. I think he's going to try to play the two because we all know that Pettis doesn't often do takedowns. And I remember when he was fighting RDA, I remember his coach calling for takedowns, saying, if you see your double, take your double. But Pettis never shot a double. And I think because, he's been doing so much striking his entire life that he's always going to fall back on what he does best. And I know now, I've heard he has a new wrestling coach and he's been working with a new wrestling coach. So I'm sure he's going to add a wrinkle in his game. And if he sees an opportunity, he may take it. But the backbone of his style will always be striking, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be the key to victory, nonetheless. All right, guys. Next question. Frankie Tejeda. Do you think Eddie has the A, wrestling top game to take Pettis down and keep him there? B, speed defense to get close to do so without getting caught with a kick? Does he have the wrestling take him down? Sure. I think if he sets up his takedowns really well, if he tags Pettis, if he surprises him with a takedown, if the striking gets really heated, I think Eddie could surprise him with a takedown for sure. But Pettis is a really good guard, and he's very good at getting up. And we have to remember that Dos Anjos got on top of Pettis, and Pettis was able to get up a few times. Now, Dos Anjos is a really good jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's been a black belt for a long time. He won a match in jiu-jitsu. I remember watching a match with him and Murillo Santana years ago. And if you guys don't know Murillo Santana is one of the best grapplers pound for pound in the world. And of course, this was years ago before Murillo ever became world champion. But yeah, he has a win over Murillo Santana. That's huge. His grappling pedigree, his grappling experience on the ground far exceeds that of Eddie Alvarez. And Dos Anjos didn't have a chance really to pass the guard. He did some good ground and pound, but he wasn't as dominant on the ground as it showed that Pettis can defend himself against somebody who's really, really experienced on the ground. I think if it does go to the ground, I think Pettis will find his way to his feet. I think he'll try a few submissions. Whether he gets them or not, it's going to be hard to tell. It's very hard to predict these things, but I think he will consistently be able to get up. So the takedowns will be an issue. Maybe Eddie could steal around if the takedowns are tight, but ultimately, I think this is going to be a rare occurrence. I think it's going to be more of stand-up. Whoever dominates the stand-up will win this fight, in my opinion. And if Eddie dominates the stand-up, he starts scoring more and more takedowns, definitely. But the backbone of this victory, I think, will go to the guy who dominates the stand-up. And if you dominate the stand-up, you'll win this fight. I think the stylistic matchup is going to come down to stand-up and not so much with the wrestling. And of course, your question with the speed and defense to do so without getting caught with a kick. I don't think anybody can avoid the kicks from Pettis, really. Not unless they do exactly what Dos Anjos did. When you fight a kicker, you want to smother him. And that's the textbook answer to fighting a kicker. When you're fighting a kicker, you want to smother him. What does that mean? Exactly what Dos Anjos did in the fight against Pettis. You push them up against the fence. You get close enough that they can't clinch you, but not so close that, excuse me, you get close enough so they can't clinch you. And you just keep away, just so you push them up against the fence so they can't kick you, because when you throw a kick, you need that step back, because the kick is a long range weapon, and when you put them up against the fence, you shorten the range between you and your opponent, so the kick is not as readily available, and they're much easier to counter, because I know my opponent cannot step back. So as he kicks me, I can counter him much more easily. I know where he's gonna be. I can gauge the distance a lot easier because of the fence, and I know what his options are. He can go right or left. He can't go back. So it really crowds a kicker, and when you crowd a kicker, it makes the kicker's job a lot harder. Again, like I said earlier, Eddie doesn't have that forward pressure style like RDA. He has more of a lateral movement style, so I don't think he'll be able to smother those kicks. Next question or comment here. Batman says, Pettis easy peasy lemon squeezy. So this is a comment from Batman. This was actually liked a lot, so I had to put it in there for you guys. Batman says that Pettis is going to win this fight. I don't know about easy squeezy, easy peasy lemon squeezy, but I'm going to side with you, Batman. I do have to agree. I do think Pettis is going to win this fight. I think he's going to use his flashy kicks, his knees, all that Muay Thai stuff that's going to throw off and Eddie Alvarez. And Eddie Alvarez might score a takedown. I think Pettis is going to be able to get up. I think he's going to be able to get up, and he's going to be able to use all the octagon, the center of the octagon. He's going to stay off the fence, and if he does go near the fence, he's going to have trained some new tactics to get away from the fence. He won't want a repeat of what happened with Dos Anjos. I'm very confident he has prepared for that. So, Batman, I'm siding with you on this one. I don't think it's going to be easy peasy, but I think it's going to go Pettis' way. Next comment or question here. Danny Shidori. Either Pettis by rear naked choke or Alvarez by decision. I see many leg kicks from Pettis, but Eddie will push forward and have control of the octagon. Well, yeah, rear naked choke could always happen, and Alvarez by decision. Yeah, I could see Alvarez. If Alvarez wins, I do see it by decision. He has a lot of KO victories. He has a lot of submission victories on his record. But we're talking about the elite fighters of the world right now. I don't see Alvarez throwing a one-punch knockout, and I don't see him scoring a cumulative TKO. Pettis has got a really good chin. I think if there is a KO in this fight, it's going to be a kick or a knee. A kick or a knee, kick to the body or a knee to the face. It may be by a punch. It could happen, of course. That's always a possibility, but not in this fight. This fight, I think if there is a KO, it'll be by cumulative strikes, lots of punishment, or a kick or a knee. And I think Pettis is, obviously the better kicker and kneer, so he has a more chance of scoring KOs, more chance of finishing this fight. I agree with you, Alvarez. If he wins, it'll be by decision, very likely by decision, but I don't see it going that way. I think Pettis is going to win. I think he's going to win 2 of the 3 rounds at least, and very likely, if there is a KO, it'll come from Pettis. And about the rear naked choke, of course, if you stun a guy, you could always rear naked choke him. And Eddie Alvarez is going to be a hard guy to sub. I think he's been subbed a couple of times in his career. He got subbed by Michael Chandler by rear naked choke, but there was a lot leading up to that. There was a lot leading up to that. You could put a black belt on his back, and the black belt will have a hard time choking him. You got to hurt Eddie Alvarez. You got to punish him. You got to really take something out of him before you get a choke. So this is true for all submissions. It'd be very hard to narrow down what sub he would use. I think it's going to come down to the striking. I think Pettis has the edge because of the Muay Thai angles he has, the scissoring kicks, the setups, the way he sets up his kicks with his hands. He doesn't commit too deep with the hands. So while Eddie's bobbing and weaving and slipping, those kicks are going to interrupt his boxing counters. And of course, it remains to be seen. But if I have to make a call, I'm going to go with Pettis, and I think it's going to be because of the strikes. All right, guys. I think we have 1 or 2 more here. Pelican Boobs. I can see this being similar to Pettis versus Melendez. I actually don't. Like I said before, Melendez has a very different style. He's more like a tank. He's like RDA. Tank is Muay Thai. Alvarez moves laterally. He does a lot of nice boxing, sweet science of boxing. His boxing is beautiful. I enjoyed very much, but I think it will clash. It's a question of styles. I think it will clash with Pettis. We saw it clash with Donald Cerrone, and we have to remember Eddie Alvarez and Pettis have a common opponent in Melendez and Donald Cerrone, and Donald Cerrone had a very effective time. He was very effective with his kicks, and Pettis can kick, at the level of Donald Cerrone. So can Eddie come up with a new game plan? That's a big question for Eddie. Can he come up with a new game plan to stop these guys from kicking him and to stop this clash of styles that he's having with the Muay Thai guys? Now, when Eddie Alvarez fought Melendez, he got interrupted a lot with the elbows. Melendez scored some beautiful elbows, and that was a close fight. I think a lot of people saw it Melendez's way as well. So again, Melendez added a curveball. He didn't just box; he was jabbing really well. I remember Melendez jabbing really well in round one, and then those elbows were just doing the trick, and Eddie had to revert to his wrestling. I don't think it's going to be as easy for him to revert to his wrestling now. I think people know what's up. I think Pettis knows what's up. He's got a new wrestling coach. He's working firmly on his wrestling. He doesn't want to get taken down, and I think he's going to make sure that his takedown defense is tight. So it's going to come down to takedown defense. Next one here, Craig Cunningham. Pettis has shown some weaknesses in dealing with pressure fighters. What techniques will Alvarez use to close off the octagon and keep Pettis with his back towards the fence? Again, guys, we've answered this one before, so I'm gonna let this one go. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. I hope you guys always remember to like, share, and comment. And if you guys are enjoying these type of videos, these pre-fight breakdown videos, I will do them often. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy breaking the fights down with you guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode.